Good morning, because okay. Uh, yeah. So we were discussing in the last class, we have started with the order of growth. So before that, we have discussed about how to define a procedure. When you're defining a procedure in different ways, we can define a procedure in different ways. So when you're defining it in different ways, how you're what type of process you will be generating based on that process, what is the time and what are the space which you are going to occupy. So that is what we call it to be as the order of growth. So we were discussing about that in the last class with respect to the example, exponential example. Taking the exponential example, we were just explaining that. So we have seen in the exponential example itself, that is b to the power of n. We can define it in three different ways. So when you are defining it in three different ways, we could achieve the complexity, that is the order of growth in terms of time as well as in terms of space. We could have it in different complexity levels also we had seen. So one, if you have defined the procedure in linear recursive way, that is, if you have defined the procedure in such a way that the process which you are going to achieve is linear recursive process, then the order of growth in terms of time as well as in terms of space was theta of n. And in this subject, we are taking the order of growth with respect to theta notation, because that is considered to be as the average case. And we have defined the procedure. The other procedure, the same b to the power of n, we could have defined it in this way. So where we were define we will be having two procedures, and from one procedure we are calling the other procedure. So if you are defining it in this way, the process what you are going to generate will be it will be in the form of linear iterative fashion or linear iterative process. So when you are defining it in this way, the order of growth in terms of time as well as in terms of space varies from the previous method. So here, if you are defining it in this way, here also the order of growth is depending with respect to the n value. So the number of times or the number of steps which you are going to take, it will be theta of n, whereas the space complexity will be reduced. It will become the constant one. Because we require only three space, we just have to pass the value for it, three arguments. Moving on to the third way of defining the procedure, we had defined the procedure by identifying whether your n value is an even number or an odd number. If it is an even number, we are just dividing it by half and we are squaring it. And we kept on doing this till your n becomes 0. If your n becomes 0, we are just returning the value 1. If it is an odd number, then what we are doing? We are just we are just multiplying the base one time and b to the power of n minus 1. We are reducing it by one time so that it becomes an even number. So when it becomes an even number, we can take up the above procedure itself. So when you are defining the procedure in this way, here we are not the number of steps which you are going to occupy, it is not going with respect to the n value. It was just reduced by half of the time. So when we are saying half of the time, that means we can say it to be as logarithmic time. So the space complexity as well as the time complexity has been reduced with respect to logarithmic time. So how do we represent it? We represent it by using theta notation, that is theta of log n. So moving on to this, a few more. In today's class, we will just take up with the example of GCD to understand the order of growth as well as the prime to check for the prime number. Okay, starting with GCD. So finding the greatest common divisor. So here the procedure, whatever we are defining, we are going to take it for two numbers, that is for two integer values. Greatest common divisor for two numbers. So how do we find? We have an algorithm named to be as Euclid's algorithm. So how this works is with respect to the remainder. So here we are going to find the remainder value. That is, I have already told we are going to take we are going to find the greatest common divisor for two numbers. So we will be applying a divided by b and we are going to take up the remainder of it. So if you see here in this step, I have already mentioned first time when you are passing, we are passing the two numbers which are named to be as a and b. So in the second time, next time when you're calling, we will be taking the remainder value along with this. So what happens is your A value will become B. So A will be represented to be as B. And B will be your actual B will be considered to be as the remainder of it. Remainder of A by B. So you will be taking the remainder value. So like this, you keep repeating the contents till how long? Till your remainder becomes 0. So just to make you understand, I've taken one example. So GCD of 206 with 40. You are going to find the greatest common divisor between 206 with 40 and 40. So in the next step, when you are doing it, it will become like your A, that is the first content will be replaced with the B value. So it is now 40. What about the B value? B value will be nothing but remainder of 206 with 40. So if you apply 206 divided by 40, the remainder what you're going to get, it will be 6. So it is the remainder part is not 0. So we are iterating it again. So next time when you are iterating, the current B is now 6. So that becomes our A. What about the B value, which will be nothing but 40, remainder of 40 with 6. So when you do 40 divided by 6, the remainder what you're going to get, it will be 4. So in the next step, still it is not 0. So we keep iterating. So GCD of now A becomes the B value. So which is 4. So that which will be replaced. Next, the B will be nothing but remainder of 6 with 4. So 6 divided by 4, the remainder value will be 2. In the next step, you're once again iterating because it's not 0. So your A becomes 2, your B becomes 4 divided by 2. So remainder of 4 divided by 2. So which is 0. So now once your remainder has become 0, what we do? We return the whatever is our A value that will be returned. So which is 2. So the greatest common divisor between 206 and 40 is nothing but which is 2. So this is what the algorithm which we are going to apply for greatest common divisor. And this is named to be as Euclid's algorithm. So can you define the procedure based on this? Taken up one more example, GCD of 16 with 28. So when you are saying 16 with 28, so when you are dividing 16 with 28, your remainder will be 16 itself. So your A becomes the B value, so which is 28. And when you're the remainder of 16 with 28, which will be 16 itself. And the next, since it is not 0, again you will iterate. So now your A is 16, B is now 28 divided by 16, which is 12. Again iterated. So where your A becomes 12, which was the previous B value. And current V will be nothing but remainder of 16 with 12. So which is 4. Once again iterate because the remainder value is not 0. So now your A will be, current A will be previous B value. So which is 4. And the B value will be nothing but 12 divided by 4. So which is the remainder value is 0. So since now the remainder has reached to 0, we can return the value to be as 4. Whatever was our A, that value we can return. So the greatest common divisor between 16 and 28 is 4. So can you just define the procedure? Can you try defining the procedure? So if you have understood the steps, it is very easy. I'll give you 2 minutes. To get the reminder, what is the procedure? Which operator do we use?
Mod operator.
Reminder.
Modulo or reminder. There is no mod operator. There is a procedure, which a built-in procedure, which is named to be as modulo, or you can use reminder. Either of it you can use. So here we have 2 arguments. So since it is 2 arguments, since when we are defining the procedure, we start with the term define, which is a special procedure, special case, which we can use it for defining the variable as well as the procedure. So open the parenthesis, define. Since it is a procedure, put all the contents within the brackets. So GCD, how many arguments? 2 arguments, named it to be as A and B. You can give any other names. And here, how many conditions do I have? I just have to check whether the reminder is 0 or not. If it is not, then again I have to call the procedure. So only 2 cases I have. So it is easy for me to go with if statement. So if syntax I am using. So if only the reminder value. So which among these 2, which one is going to have the reminder value? The second one, which is B. So if equals to B with 0. So I am equating whether my B value is 0 or not. If it is 0, I will directly return my A value. That is what is considered to be as the GCD part. If it is not, then I'm once again calling my GCD procedure, where my A will be, next time when I'm calling my GCD procedure, my A will be nothing but the current B value. So I'm just writing it to be as B. My B will be reminder of A with B. So which will return the value, modulo value will be returned. The reminder value will be returned. So B will be getting the reminder value, and I'm closing all the parentheses. All the open parentheses, I'm just closing it.
Ma'am?
Yes.
We need to check whether A is greater than B or not, no, ma'am. Depending on that, we need to change the order first, no, ma'am.
If your B is greater than A, what happens? You will get the reminder, right? If you have seen the previous, if you have seen this case, A is smaller than B, right?
Yes.
It will automatically get shifted like this.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Because when we are 16 divided by 28, when you do, the remainder itself will become our dividend value, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
it will get auto shifted. So that is how this algorithm works. Okay. So we don't have to check with respect to the values. Okay. Now coming to the order of growth. Coming to the complexity part. What will be the complexity now? Usually, whenever we say order of growth, we take it with respect to the input contents. So if you are having a single single argument, then we can relate it with respect to that particular argument. Now here, in the previous example also, exponential when we have taken, one is base, the other one is the n value. Base, it remains same. it never changes, but the n value keeps, the entire procedure is depending with respect to the n value. So we were equating it with respect to that particular n value. Now here, when we are taking with respect to GCD procedure, we are having A and B. So with respect to which value we can take? Or okay, first of all, what process it is going to generate? The procedure, whatever we have defined here, what process it generates?
Linear iterative only, ma'am.
Linear iterative process. It generates linear iterative process, right? So now when you see in this case, if you one small numbers I have taken here in this example, so which was 4 and 5. So when we are taking up we require, see, 4 and 5 when we have taken the next step, your value b is not 0, so we were once again finding the remainder. It comes to the else part, find the remainder. Your a becomes 5, b becomes 4, and once again you check the whether b is 0 or not. It is not, so it will be coming to the false part, false statement part, where you are calling the procedure, where you are having your a replaced with b value, so it will be getting the value 4, and then it will be 1. Once again iterate. By this time your remainder will become 0, and you are just going to return the a value, which is now 1. Okay, so here the steps, it is we can say that it is neither it is depending both with respect to a and b values, right? If you take up a bigger number, like in the first example, whatever I have shown, which is like 206 and 40, there also you have ended up having how many steps? If you take up a bigger number, like say 206, 40, there also you have almost ended up got your final result with respect to 5 steps. If you take 1628, there also almost 4 to 5 steps. If you are going with 4 and 5, there also it is almost 5 steps. Okay, so it is it is like see, in certain cases it we cannot always depend. It is like both this algorithm, it makes it requires both the contents of both the values a as well as b, and this procedure will be iterating depending on the remainder value, right? Remainder of both the numbers. So when you see whether you have taken a bigger number, say thousands, or some whatever a bigger value, then also you will be almost ending up the number of steps which you require. It will be almost within 5 to 6 steps. You may end up getting the results. If you go with a smaller, also it is almost within 4 to 5, within 3 to 4 steps, you will end up getting your result. Right? So it is like, it is depending with respect to your remainder value. Okay. So based on that concept, the order of growth, whatever we have for this particular procedure, it will be, since it is depending with respect to the remainder, that remainder is what I'm considering it to be as the n. So the number of steps as well as the number of space required for this Euclidean's algorithm, it is very less when compared with your either a or b value, because we are taking the remainder of these two numbers. So I can say that it is logarithmic. Are you able to understand what I am trying to interpret? So when we are we have seen a few examples like factorial, Fibonacci series, exponentiation. In this exponentiation itself, we have taken up all the 3 cases. So when in all those cases, it was directly depending with respect to the n value. Whatever was your input value, it was directly depending. Here also, it is depending on your A and B value, especially with respect to remainder of it. Since we have written this algorithm with respect to the remainder value, whether your numbers are bigger numbers or smaller numbers, within 3 to 6 steps, you will end up getting your results. So we can say that your this algorithm works with respect to logarithmic terms. So average case, the number of steps as well as the number of space required will be log n. Am I correct? Any correction? Any doubt?
No, ma'am.
That's a small correction, right?
Space is theta of 1.
Yes, space should be theta of 1. When I was just copy pasting, I just copy pasted this. So space should be 1 here.
Ma'am, but then this is a recursive approach, no, ma'am.
It is recursive operation itself. But whenever, each time you are calling this procedures, you just had to store only 2 arguments, 2 values.
But
How
then
many
it
other
will
times?
maintain a stack for that, no, ma'am, for each state.
You are maintaining the stack, but along with this contents, along with these contents, you don't require any more contents to be stored, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you are just returning the value 1, only this value 1, that is, you are just popping the contents. Only that particular space has to be removed. Along with this, you don't have any extra contents how you have seen for the factorial one, multiplication of something. So with some operator, some value that is not required for this. So that is the reason why I'm saying with respect to space, it will be theta of 1. Because it requires only 2 space, 2 arguments to be stored.
Ma'am? Yes. Like I think I'm mixing time complexity and space complexity, but even then the number of steps will be can be varied, no, ma'am. Like sometimes we'll be getting just two, 3 steps, and then some other times some more steps. So won't we see that space is not constant and it also is varying according to log n? Like for the remaining, the previous ones, factorial n, suppose like factorial 6, the space was constant. It was exactly dependent on n. But here it is varying, no, ma'am. Like even we are not sure that it is definitely log n. It is varying. It can be small also or bigger also. When something is varying, definitely we cannot put it as constant, no, ma'am.
But if you see the space part, how many ever times you are calling the procedure, it requires only 2 space. Yes or no?
Yes.
The number of steps.
But then we weren't checking the number of arguments, no?
We are not checking.
We weren't we were checking the total space occupied, no, ma'am. The total space occupied is changing, so you see, we will be checking the size itself, like at a time, what will be the size of for each call. That will be space complexity, ma'am.
Checking, can you repeat once again?
Ma'am, like when we don't used to maintain a counter, the size used to increase and decrease, no, ma'am. Like size used to kept varying, like to overall the process. Here also size is varying, no, ma'am. Even though the width is same, but then the number of calls are varying, no, ma'am. For everything.
Number of calls are varying, so based on that only the number of steps will be increasing, right? So when we take up the overall complexity, it will be nothing but time into space, right?
Yeah, okay, ma'am. Ma'am. Theta of 1 only seems correct.
So it will be so these two put together only we say complexity, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So that's why if you so I just have splitted that one with respect to how many steps are required. So it will be almost, it is not growing or it is not same as your whatever input value. It is not it doesn't require more number of steps, but it requires very less number of steps. So how do we represent the less number of steps? Only we have is that too almost half not half, lesser than half itself. So how do we represent lesser than half kind of things? So for that we go with this logarithmic terms. So when it comes with space here, since it is linear iterative process and the number of arguments which we have here is only 2 arguments. So we need space for storing only these 2 arguments. How many ever times you call this procedure, we require only two arguments to be stored. So keeping that, it is we are calling it to be as a constant. So when I say complexity of a procedure, it will be nothing but time into space. Okay. So overall, this procedure will be log n.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. We'll move on. Okay, moving on with the next one. Next procedure, checking for the prime numbers. Checking for primality. That is whether a given number is prime number or not. So already you know different methods are existing. So one simple method which we were doing till now, it is like we call it to be as searching for divisor. Your whatever number you have, you keep usual way. You run a for loop in C program. If you have written you would have written, you might have run the program. You might have run a loop till it reaches the value 2 or something, starting from the n. And if it is divisible by some number, you just come out of the loop, something like that. So that is what is the one method which we call it to be as searching for divisors. If there is any divisor existing, then we are saying that it is not a prime number. If doesn't, we say it to be as the prime number. There is one more method which we call it to be as the Fermat test. This is an algorithm. So these are the two methods which we are having for checking whether a given number is prime number or not. So first let us see how we are going to do with respect to the searching for divisor. So this method all of you know. Just if you what will be your input will be your number given, and you have just start checking with your whether your number is divisible starting from 2 or opposite. You start with n minus 1 and reach till 2. Either of it way you can do it. So here I'm starting with 2. I'm initializing another variable and I'm starting it with 2, and I'll go on till n value. So I'm just writing the steps. First, I'm asking the user to enter the n value. I'm assigning the variable called test divisor, which has been initialized to 2. And I'm checking whether there is any, it is divisible or not. So for checking whether it is divisible, I'm checking for the remainder part. If it is equals to 0, then I will just return the test divisor value. That means this is the divisor which is divisible for this particular number. And if it is the same as my n value, then I can say that it is a prime number. Okay, I'm going till n value. So I'm just checking if the divisor, test divisor, whatever I have achieved, If it is equals to n, then I can directly say it is my prime number. That means starting from 2 till n, I didn't had any number which was which was divisible. If it is not, then comes to the else part saying that it is not a prime number. Then I keep incrementing. Once I come out of the loop, I'll increment my test divisor, check it with the next value. So 3. So like that, it goes on till which value? It goes on till n value. So each time I'm coming, at what point of time I have to come out of it? So I'm just checking whether my test divisor is greater than n value. So once it crosses my n value, I'll just come out of this particular loop. And I will just come out and stop it. Okay. If my condition, that is, if the test divisor is greater than n, then I will be coming out of the program. If it is not, then I will be repeating the loop. So when I'm repeating the loop, each time the test divisor value will keep on incrementing, and I will check whether it is divisible by whether we are having any remainder equal to 0. If it is equal to 0, then I'm just comparing one more comparison I'm doing, whether it is equal to n or not. If it is equal to n, I can say that it is a prime number, because the number itself is divisible by n is divided by n itself. So I can say that it is a prime number. Otherwise, I'm just coming out of it. Okay. So if I write an algorithm in this way, I have just taken one example with respect to 5. If my n is 5 and I'm starting my test divisor with 2, 5 mod 2 is not equal to 0. So I incremented. If 5 mod 3 is not equals to 0, I have again incremented 5. It is 4. So 5 mod 4 not equals to 0. My test divisor incremented to 5. So now condition 5 is greater than 5. Condition doesn't satisfy. So it will again come and check whether 5 mod 5. Now it is equals to 0. Now I'm checking whether it is equals to my n value. So I can say that it is prime number. So if I write the algorithm in this way, what will be the complexity? Students, if I'm writing with respect to the same till I reach the n value, each time I'm just incrementing the test divisor value. If I'm incrementing it each time and comparing it with respect to modulo, and it keeps iterating in this way. So if my n is 5, it was almost n minus 1 times we were checking for the modulo operator as well as the greater than condition. So it was repeated. So it is almost theta of n itself. That means it kept on, it is depending, the size of the program also increases with respect to the n value itself, right? So instead of this, can't I stop it before itself? I can do it. So in C program, when you were doing it, you might have done in 2 different ways. That is either by half of the n value. So that is by taking it to be as n by 2. Or you would have done with respect to square root of n. So either of it we can use. So instead of taking n by 2, what I have done is I have used square root 1. So when I say square root 1, which will be nothing but, I can even consider this to be as, instead of writing square root of n, because you already know when I already have seen how the square root procedure works, right? So how many procedures we have and all those things. So instead of calling a square root procedure, just to reduce the complexity, what I have done, I have applied a square procedure onto the test divisor. Okay, instead of applying square root of n, I have just taken the square root towards the other side. So when I take square root to the other side, it will become square. So I'm just comparing whether my test divisor is, the square of my test divisor is greater than n. Logic remains same. Okay, it is the same as the square root logic. So instead of calling the square root procedure, because you have seen the definition of square root procedure, where how many other procedures we have to call and how many times it keeps executing till you get the tolerance value. It keeps iterating. So instead of taking the procedure for those many iterations, what I can do, I have just applied a square procedure. So square procedure means I just have to call multiplication one time. So when we keep these two procedures, less complexity is there for the square procedure. So I have applied square procedure onto the test divisor. So test divisor, square of test divisor is greater than n. I'm just returning the n value, so that it'll just compare whether it is same as the n value, and I can come out of the procedure. So the same example, if I take here, n is equals to 5, the test divisor is 2. First, I am comparing whether it is reminder is equals to 0. It is not. So I have incremented the test divisor value, which is 3. Now, now I am comparing with respect to the step 4, I am comparing. So that is nothing but 3 squares, which is 9. 9 is greater than 5. Condition is satisfied. So I am just returning the n value itself. So whatever is my n, which is 5. So once I come out of this procedure, I will be comparing 5 is equals to 5. So slight modifications I have to do here. This comparing part, I have to do it outside. Okay, in this algorithm, once I come out of this this loop, I am returning the n value. This step I have to do it once I come out of this procedure. If it is equals to same n value itself, I can say it is a prime number. Otherwise, I can say it is not a prime number. Okay. So keeping this logic, I have just defined the procedure. So first, entire thing I have put together. So first, let us see the first procedure. Everything I haven't defined it in one single procedure. It has been split into different modules. So when you are defining the procedures and all, you have to take a note that you divide the contents into different modules. So how do you how you can divide it? So when you are making it to be as a modules, make sure that it will be in such a way that we can reuse it for some other purpose also. So first time, the procedure what we so if you see the algorithm here, how you can divide it. So first thing is we can put this checking part in one place, this loop and this checking part in another other procedure. So remaining things are just considered to be as the starting part. So I just named it to be as the smallest divisor, where I'm asking the n value from the user, which which n value I have to find the smallest divisor. And I'm calling this find divisor procedure, where I'm just passing this n value and I'm passing this 2. So this 2 is nothing but my test divisor value. Starting with the starting where I have just told, I will be starting this test divisor value with 2. So this I'm passing it to this find divisor procedure. So if you see the find divisor procedure, it is here defined. In this find divisor procedure, you have already seen in this algorithm, what are the things which I have to compare? I have to just check whether square of test divisor is greater than n value. After that, I have to apply I have to apply reminder procedure onto this n and test divisor. Based on that, I will be returning the test divisor value. If it is equals to 0, I will be returning the test divisor value. Otherwise, I will be calling I have to increment my test divisor. So I have 3 things to be done. So since I have 3 things, instead of going with if in the else if ladder pattern, I will be using this syntax. So in condition first part, what I am checking is whether my square root of, that is square of test divisor, is greater than n. If it is so, I am just returning the n value. Otherwise, if it is not, then what I have to do, I will just apply the reminder has to be found. So reminder of n with test divisor. That is n mod test divisor value has been taken. So I have defined. So divides is a user defined procedure. So which I have defined it here. So in this procedure, what I'm just doing, I'm just calculating remainder of a and b and equating it to 0. So this divides procedure is going to return either true or false. So in this language, the true is considered to be as hash t, false is considered to be as hash f. So this divides procedure based on the remainder is equated to 0. Either it will return true or it will return false. If it returns true, this value will be returned. Whatever is your test divisor value, that will be returned. If it is false, it will come to the else part. What is the statement? What we have to do in the else part? We have to increment the test divisor value. So here, how I can increment and assign it? Only way is I have to call the procedure again. So I'm calling the procedure find divisor again, where my n value will never change because I just need, I have to retain this n value throughout. So n value, I'll just maintain this n value as such, but my test divisor will be incremented. It is getting incremented by 1 time. After this, no more steps. So I'm just closing my else part. I'm closing my condition. I'm closing the define part. Okay. So till here, hope it is clear. So first I have defined the smallest divisor procedure where I'm calling find divisor just to check is there any divisor existing. After that, I have just defined a smallest procedure that is divide procedure which will return true or false. Next, which is the main procedure, because whenever we give pass it to the user, we will name the procedures with respect to what is the content. So with respect to that, I have defined a procedure called prime, where usually when we say with respect to the prime number, the same prime, the name itself we have to use. I'm asking the user to enter the n value. So here, in this prime procedure, now we can easily make out if the smallest divisor, if it is returning, whatever it is returning, I have to equate it with the n value. If it is equal to n, I can say that it is a prime number. If it is not equal to n, that means there is some divisor existing. So when I can identify when there is some value existing, then I can say that it is not prime. So I have defined this prime procedure where only one true or false part is existing. So I go with this if statement. And I'm calling the smallest divisor, which I have defined it here. So the smallest divisor is equated to n value. So whatever the smallest divisor procedure is returning, whether it is equal to n. If it is equal to n, I have just written it to be as display prime. So here, if I write it in this way, display prime, it will just display the output to be as prime itself. You can even write it like this. Without using this display statement, even within by using this double quotes, you can write it. So here when you are writing it like this, it will be like just returning this particular string itself. It will just return, this procedure prime is just returning a string. That is what it is interpreted. Is it clear? Or if you don't want any statement, you want only true or false. If you wanted only true or false, like this, also you can just write. Define prime procedure where you are equating smallest divisor n with n. So since it is equality is there, it will just return true or false. So which will be nothing but hash t or hash f. So if you wanted the output in terms of true or false, then you can define it like this. If you wanted some string or some output kind of thing, then you can define it like this. So which way you want, you can define it. Whether you want the sentence, you can define it with respect to the sentence, or if you want true or false, in this way. Okay. What will be the complexity of this? I think it's time up. So the complexity for this will be, since we have applied the square root concept. So if I say the square, I am squaring the test divisor value, I am squaring it and then comparing it with my n value. It is nothing but, which is indirectly I can say that it is square root of n. So I am saying that the order of growth, it is with respect to square root of n. So that's why I have mentioned the order of growth for this particular procedure. It will be theta of square root of n. So I'll stop with this. We'll continue with the Fermat's test in the next class.